Okay, so can you remember where we stopped? In the last class, we start discussion about introduction to foreign exchange markets. We went through few slides, but I hope now you won't remember anything. So I'm going to start it from the beginning, not the whole course, but the foreign exchange part. There will be 2 sessions on the foreign exchange markets. Then we will switch into treasury management, which will be done by Mr. Peri Samudranayakam. So foreign exchange markets, I hope you can see the presentation now. If not, please let me know. A brief introduction to FX market, organization of the FX market, and some key terminologies we are going to discuss. Some of them are by now you are familiar, as we have discussed this earlier. Why do we need foreign exchange? So take this example. As a country, we do a lot of imports. A Sri Lankan importer who imports a car from Japan manufacturer. How should that manufacturer pay that? Sorry, importer, Sri Lankan importer pays that amount to the Japan manufacturer or the Japanese exporter. Japanese exporter cannot accept Sri Lankan rupees. They need Japanese yen. But in Sri Lanka, we don't have Japanese yen as Sri Lankans. So we have to, Sri Lankan people have to buy Japanese yen and transfer that to Japanese exporter. Same thing when Sri Lankan exporters are considered. We send goods and services to foreign countries, but they will pay not in rupees, though we pay in Japanese yen to the Japanese exporter. Importers in other countries, they won't pay in rupees to Sri Lanka. They will pay in their currencies, probably in dollars or euros or Japanese yen or Chinese yuan or something like that. So, but in Sri Lanka, exporters, they need rupees. All their expenses are in rupees. Whatever the labor cost, raw materials, everything they buy, pay in rupees. So they need rupees. So therefore, they need to convert dollars or any other foreign currency that they receive into rupees. So that exchange in one currency into another currency, it's not common for Sri Lanka, applicable for Sri Lanka, it's common for all other countries as well. Even say consider American exporter who sends goods to UK, UK may pay it in UK pound. UK importer may pay it in sterling pound. So American exporter, he will receive sterling pound, but he needs dollars. He has to convert sterling pound into US dollars. That can be other way around as well. Any importer who imports goods from, any exporter who exports goods from UK to US will receive in US dollars, not in sterling pound. Then that export has to convert his earnings in dollars into sterling pound. So that is very common with the existence of international trades, because different countries use different currencies. But in international trade, we have to use a foreign currency to make payment and receive payments. Say, sometimes it may be a third country currency. Say, if we export something to India, we won't accept Indian rupees. The invoice will be in US dollars. So it's not the US dollars is not the currency in Sri Lanka or not the currency in India. But we invoice it in dollars, third currency. In that case, Indian import has to purchase dollars against Indian rupee and send it to Sri Lanka. Then the Sri Lankan export has to convert it into Sri Lankan rupees, US dollars. So buying and selling both happens in both things. So with this international trades, we need foreign exchange market. What is foreign exchange market? That is the place where we convert one currency into another currency. One party buys a currency and sell another currency. So in this market, so both goods are currencies. What you sell is a currency, what you buy is another currency. But in general other markets, when you say buy, you buy a good or service against a currency, money. But in this instance, foreign exchange market, the specialty is what you sell is currency, what you buy is also a currency. So we exchange two currencies. That's why we say it's a foreign exchange market, or in short, we call it FX market. So I hope you are clear about it, and we have already discussed that. So no need to explain this slide again. This is a summary of what I have told. All over the world, every country, they know in international transactions, international trades among different countries, depending on the two countries involved in the transaction, the requirement of currency exchange may vary. However, the common fact is at least one party has to exchange one currency into another currency. It may be sometimes both parties may have to do that. So therefore, the existence of foreign exchange market arises due to international trade to facilitate this international transactions between or among countries. But with that, different other usages also has arisen, like speculation or arbitrage. We will discuss towards the end of the course what is speculation, what is arbitrage. However, the root cause of foreign exchange market is to facilitate the existence of the foreign exchange market is to facilitate the international trade. Hope you are clear about it. Sorry for the small pause. There's a small technical problem here. They will sort it out soon. So as I said, foreign exchange market is the market where we exchange currencies or convert one currency into another currency. So it's a over-the-counter market. If you consider the organization of the foreign exchange market, it's a over-the-counter market. I think you can remember what is the meaning of over-the-counter market, but I'll again explain what is the over-the-counter market. In the over-the-counter market, it's just an agreement between two parties to buy and sell. One party will agree to buy, other party agrees to sell. This is an agreement between two parties, no regulatory involvement, no monitoring, nothing. So there's a huge risk, counterparty risk. Other party may default the transaction. That is the key of the over-the-counter market. What is the other market compared to over-the-counter market? If you can remember, just think about it. It's the exchange traded market. What is the exchange traded market? There's a centralized place or a system. All transaction goes through a exchange. And ultimately, any transaction taken place between a buyer and seller will split into two as two transaction between buyer and the exchange and the seller and the exchange. So the counterparty risk is minimal. And there are a lot of rules, regulations, and measures to mitigate the counterparty risk. Exists to the exchange, not to the end users. So that's the major difference between over-the-counter market and exchange traded market. Foreign exchange market, so far, it's a mainly over-the-counter market, but after 2008 financial crisis, they face a lot of defaults due to this through this over-the-counter market. There are regulators in the worldwide. They are taking some measures to minimize this risk, come up with new ideas. There's a concept called central counterparty. Now we are slowly moving towards this. So in future, even the FX transaction will be settled through a central counterparty. Not exactly same as the exchange traded markets, but similar, some sort of exchange traded market. Some characteristics will be there in the central counterparty market. And the FX market, the other key thing is it's 24 hours. There's no closure. That means that may be in the global perspective. It's a 24-hour market. There's no closure. When it opens Monday in Sydney, it closes only in Friday, 5 p.m. in New York time. Saturday and Sunday are holidays, so that's the only time that FX market close in general. But there are exceptions. Middle East countries, they have some different holidays, Friday and Saturday. So some markets are open in Sundays. That's the opening hours if you consider the foreign exchange market. But if you consider Sri Lankan domestic, Sri Lankan foreign exchange market, that means if you want to buy dollar rupee or any transaction against rupee, we have to do it within Sri Lanka. Our market opens only in Monday to Friday, but every day only 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. because there's no international or transaction between international parties, overseas parties in rupees. So whenever there is a Sri Lankan party involved, we have the market. Even the foreign parties, they want to buy rupees, they will come through a bank and the transaction will be taken place during the opening hours of Sri Lankan market, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. in normal business days. The other characteristics of the foreign exchange market is high liquidity. What does it mean by high liquidity? Again, I am talking about in the global perspective, not in the domestic perspective. Any amount you want to buy or you want to sell, you can trade in the market without having any adverse impact to the prices in the market. So that's why we call it's a high liquidity market. any amount you can buy and sell. And there are a lot of participants who is willing to buy at any price or who is willing to sell at any price. So therefore, within few seconds, you can conclude the transaction. The turnover of the global foreign exchange market is about 6 trillion, according to the BIS survey in 2019, $6 trillion. So you can imagine what is the size of the market. With that, there are liquidity, ample liquidity. So no need to hesitate. You can go and do the transaction. But in the Sri Lankan context, if we talk about the liquidity in the Sri Lankan context, so though it's not liquid as other major currencies in the global markets, within Sri Lanka, this is the most liquid market. When we consider the other financial instruments, like even the government bonds are not that liquid compared to foreign exchange. Even in Sri Lanka, foreign exchange is the most liquid market. And the location, we'll move into the next slide, the location. For the foreign exchange market, you need not to have a central location. Like you go to a Sunday fair or something like that, no need to have a location. It's a set of communication channels, networks, the transaction taken place through networks or over the phone or computer systems. But you might have seen Colombo Stock Exchange. Though it's an exchange, there's a central place where all the trades are taking place. For foreign FX, foreign exchange, you don't want that sort of environment. You can sit in your office or maybe nowadays in your home, but still you can contact another counterparty in somewhere else in the world, enter into a foreign exchange transaction. So it's a network of global participants. They communicate each other. Few decades back, the main communication channel was the telephone. Now with the internet, we have electronic trading platforms or in other communication channels. Through that, participants enter into foreign exchange transactions. So those are the key characteristics of foreign exchange market. And who are the participants? Let's see who are the participants of the foreign exchange market. As I mentioned at the very beginning, the reason for the existence of foreign exchange market is international trade. That means export and imports. Therefore, one of the major participants are exporters and importers. Exporters, they may need to sell foreign currency they receive and buy the domestic currency. Importers, they want to do the other way around. That means sell domestic currency and buy foreign currency to make the payment for their imports. And these importers and exporters, they may be corporate clients, corporates, or individuals. Say, nowadays, you may buy things online, not in domestically, maybe from foreign parties. You may buy something using eBay. How do you make the payment? Can you make the payment in rupees? No. You may use your credit card. Ultimately, it will be in rupees. But if you go to the statement, you can see you have purchased some amount of dollars. That in the statement, you can see the equivalent, the dollar equivalent, sorry, rupee equivalent of that dollar amount. Say whatever the item that you purchase is $100, if the exchange rate is 180, in your statement you can see 18,000 rupees. In that, you do two transactions. First thing is you buy the goods or service from eBay, then you buy dollars from your bank and make that or transfer that $100 to eBay. That's what's happening behind the screen in that transaction. So as individuals, we buy or sell foreign currency. If you travel abroad, fortunately or unfortunately, what you can't do these days, again, you need foreign currency. You take foreign currency. Basically, in Sri Lankan context, we take dollars to the country wherever you travel. So, in the FX markets, exporters, importers participate in the FX market. Those can be corporate or individuals. And one thing I would like to highlight here, sometimes I may take examples from individual perspective, but we have to think about the volumes here. Most of the concepts that we are going to discuss here are applicable only for the wholesale market. In Sri Lankan context, at least $0.25 million generally, even $0.1 million sometimes transaction take place, but $0.25 million or more than that considered as wholesale in Sri Lankan context. That depends. However, all the concepts that we are going to discuss mostly applicable for this wholesale market. So some of these concepts may not applicable for individuals, those who are buying or selling foreign currency with a bank or a money exchanger. But some of the concepts are still applicable. And then I said, exporters, importers, they involved in the foreign exchange market, and while explaining, I mentioned that you buy foreign currency or you sell foreign currency with a bank or through a bank. So then the next important participants of the foreign exchange markets are banks. All over the world, a lot of banks are involved in this market. Again, they play two roles. One can be a intermediary role. That means exporter or an importer wants to do a foreign exchange transaction. Bank will become an intermediary party. Bank will buy from an exporter or sell to another importer. Like in lending and borrowing, bank borrows money from depositors and lends to whoever who wants, borrowers. Likewise, in the foreign exchange markets also, there are parties like exporters, those who have foreign currency but they want to sell. On the other hand, there are parties, importers, those who wants to buy foreign currency. The transaction won't take place directly between an exporter and an importer. Exporter won't sell foreign currency directly to the importer. It's difficult, like in borrowing and lending. So the intermediary bank comes into play in that scenario. So bank buys foreign currency from exporters and sells to importers. That's one role that bank or banks play. The other one is they may participate in the foreign exchange market for their own requirement or with the intention to make profit when the exchange rate changes. maybe speculative transactions, or maybe arbitrage trades. As I mentioned, we will learn what is arbitrage, what is speculation later. Then the other parties are brokers. Sometimes even the bank cannot, say bank has bought some dollars from a exporter, bank does not want to keep it. Bank wants to sell it to somebody else. But even the bank cannot find another buyer. In that instances, bank will use brokers to find out another bank who wants to buy foreign exchange. Or the other bank who wants to buy foreign currency use a broker to find out what are the banks that are willing to sell foreign currency. That brokerage can happen between or to meet buyers and sellers in the interbank market. That means the market exists among banks. That brokers can be there or can exist between customers as well. But mainly that broker market is available for the interbank market. Then the other party, investors and speculators. Again, individual or corporate or hedge funds or pension funds, those who invest in foreign assets, they need to buy foreign exchange, they need to sell foreign exchange, or they may try to take the advantage of movements of foreign exchange exchange rates. So all those are falls into this category, investors and speculators. So here also the word speculators you can see. So I'll explain what is speculation. If I ask today, what do you think about the dollar rupee exchange rate? Do you think it will go back again towards 200 rupees per dollar, or do you think it will go towards 150 rupees per dollar? That is your view. Speculators so take that sort of view, but they do research, do studies, and use forecasting models, or there's a concept tool called technical analysis in the foreign exchange market. They use all these to predict the movements in foreign exchange market. Based on their view, they do transactions. If you think today dollar rupee exchange rate will go to 200 in 3 months time, what would you do? If possible, you will buy dollars today, paying say 186 or 190 rupees for $1, and keep it for 3 months. When your view is realized, that means when the exchange rate goes to 200, you can sell the same $1 at a rate of 200 rupees. To buy $1, you pay only 190 rupees, but you sell it at 200 rupees, you make a profit of 10 rupees. That is purely based on your view. You take a risk. That sort of transaction we call speculative trades. What is the risk that in the speculation? You bought $1 at 190. What would happen if it goes to 180 or 170? You make a loss. That's the risk in speculation. So speculators, they just don't do trades. They follow some strict guidelines, rules, we will discuss those. However, speculation basically means you do a study, we, weave a form, take a view, what would be the exchange rate, and based on your view, you take a or you enter into a transaction, either to buy the currency or sell the currency. When your view is realized or you make a loss and you cannot absorb more than that, you will do the reverse side, that is speculation. So there are a lot of speculators in the foreign exchange market, especially in the global foreign exchange market. In Sri Lanka, speculation is not allowed. That's why individuals, we cannot buy foreign exchange without any reason. That means without any underlying transaction. Either you should buy something from a foreign party, or you should get some service, or you travel abroad. There should be a reason, valid reason. So without that, in Sri Lanka, individuals, we cannot buy foreign exchange or we cannot sell foreign exchange. There are restrictions. But in the global markets, in many countries, there are no such restrictions. Anybody can buy, anybody can sell any amount. So there are a lot of speculators. As I mentioned, even the banks, they do speculative trades. So now in the current context, the global foreign exchange market mostly driven by these speculative trades. Though the market was established to participate importers and exporters or the general international trades, now the market is mostly driven by speculative trades. Major volumes or the out of that 6 trillion, more than 50% is due to speculative trades. Then the last participant, central banks. Why? Again, in my view, central banks participate in the foreign exchange market in, again, two ways. One thing is, almost all central banks maintain a foreign exchange reserve. In Sri Lanka, Central Bank of Sri Lanka maintains a foreign exchange reserve. It may comprise of assets of different countries, say government bonds, US government bond, UK government bond, German government bonds, Japanese government bond, Chinese government bonds, likewise. So whenever they wants to, central bank wants to sell some assets, foreign assets, say you want to sell US government bonds and buy German government bonds. What do? They have to sell US dollars and buy German or the currency in German, use in German, euro. Sell dollars and buy euros. That has to be done by central bank. That's one reason. Central banks participate in foreign exchange market for their reserve management activities. The other one is for the intervention in the foreign exchange market to control the exchange rates in their own currencies. Says Sri Lanka dollar rupee exchange rate. If the Central Bank of Sri Lanka wants to maintain it at a particular level, central bank may have to sell foreign currency in the market or buy foreign currency from the market to maintain that. Or it may be to, if you take the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, they have a fixed exchange rate, 7.75 Hong Kong dollars per US dollar. They have to maintain it. To maintain that, if there's excess dollars in the market, Hong Kong Monetary Authority have to buy that. Otherwise, exchange rate will go down. So, if there's not enough dollars in the market, Hong Kong Monetary Authority will have to supply those dollars into the market. That is selling dollars in the market against Hong Kong dollar. That is intervention to maintain exchange rate at a particular level. But some countries intervene only to curb the excess volatility, going up and down very frequently by large amounts. So that will have an impact on economy. Especially, it would be very difficult to exporters and importers and other business to take decision. Today the exchange rate is 180, tomorrow is 195, next day 175. The risk is high, volatility is high. So to curb that volatility also, sometimes central banks intervene in the foreign exchange market. So that's how central banks participate in the foreign exchange market. One role is reserve manager's role, other one is maintaining foreign exchange market of domestic foreign exchange market. We call it domestic foreign exchange market. That means the exchange rate of the domestic currency. Maintain the exchange rate of the domestic currency. So those are the roles played by central banks in the foreign exchange market globally. Those are the major participants: exporters and importers, banks, brokers, investors and speculators, and central banks. So as I mentioned, if you have any question, please interrupt. You can unmute your mic and ask your question. So we will move into the mechanism that would take place for the transaction flow that would happen in a country like Sri Lanka. Closed economy. Not everybody is willing to buy or is not willing. Everybody is allowed to buy or sell foreign currency. Say in a country there are 4 banks like this, and there's an exporter who has export something. Now he got dollars. What he has to do? He has to sell that dollars and get domestic currency, say Sri Lankan rupee. He will take it into a bank, sell foreign currency and buy local currency, and he walks out. But what happens to the bank? Now bank is holding that dollar amount, say $1 million. Bank holds that $1 million. Is there any risk to the bank? Yes. If the exchange rate changes or the exchange rate reduces than the amount that you pay to exporter, the bank make a loss. If the bank think exchange rate will increase, then the bank may willing to hold this, but it may not be the case. And there are, especially in Sri Lanka, there are limits on the amounts that any bank can hold foreign assets, foreign currency. If that limit exceeds, still the bank has to sell the excess amount. So what would happen? This bank will call another bank, ask, hey, can you give me a price for dollars? In this market, nobody can say, no, I don't want to do any foreign exchange transaction, so I cannot give you a price. It's not the norm. It won't happen. If that happens, next day, that bank won't be able to do any transaction in the foreign exchange market. So when this bank asks a price from this bank, say, oh, listeners will put it This is A. This is bank B, C, bank D. So whenever bank A asks a price from bank B cannot refuse it. Yeah, the bank B has to give a price to bank A. If bank B refuses, what would happen? Next day or next minute maybe, bank B wants to do a trade. None of them will agree to do a trade with bank B. So the norm is whenever other party asks a price, you should give them a price. So bank A asks a price from bank B. Bank A is willing to sell at that price. So bank A will sell that dollar amount to bank B. Now bank B does not want to hold it. Bank B contact bank C. Do the same thing. Sell it to bank C. Bank C to bank D. Bank B, again they don't want to keep it. Bank A. What would happen when this is happening? The banks in the system, they can see there are foreign currency supply in the market and everybody is selling. That means supply has increased. I think you know the supply and demand theory. In that, what would happen when the supply increases? Price goes down. So the exchange rate will start to go down. This would happen until two things. One is importer comes into the picture. He wants to buy foreign currency. He will come to a bank and say, hey, I want to buy dollars. Then the bank can give a price to him. If the importer agrees to that price, importer will buy that foreign currency. So importer sells local currency to the bank and buys foreign currency from the bank. And then now what would happen? The inflow came through this exporter into the system is going out from the system. So there's no more supply. Then the exchange rate will be stabilized. For the second thing, what would happen? The central bank monitors the foreign exchange market. Central bank can see there's a lot of selling goes around. Then the exchange rate will go down drastically. So that is not good. So we'll stop that. What would the central bank do? Central bank will buy those dollars from the FX market. The same as the impact is very similar to the importer buys from the market. So then the exchange rate will be stabilized. But this can be happen other way around. Instead, the exporter comes first. What would happen if the importer comes first? Importer comes first, buy foreign currency. Now, whatever the dollar holdings of Bank D has given to importer, Bank D does not want to stay without that amount. Bank D wants to buy that. So they may call all these banks and try to buy. So that will again go around among banks. The system will see a demand for foreign currency. Then the exchange rate will go up. Unless exporter comes and sell it into the system, or the central bank comes and sell into the system. So central bank we call inject or absorb foreign currency. Inject means supply foreign currency to the system. Absorb means taking out foreign currency from the system. So that is the mechanism in the market. Countries like us. But when there are a lot of participants, say a lot of exporters, lot of importers and other individual investors, speculators, when there are a lot of participants, this can be done very easily because there are a lot of sellers, lot of buyers. It won't have major impact on the banks. They just buy from one side and sell to another side. I hope you understood that. So this market among the banks, we call it interbank market. Transaction taken place among banks, we call it interbank market. Then we will move into the jargons or the terminology used in foreign exchange market. There are a lot of fancy words. Don't worry. All are very simple terms. Use different jargons to explain. That's it. Very simple meaning, easy to understand, but pay your concentration. What is the exchange rate? Even by now I have used the word many times. What is the exchange rate? It is a price of one currency in terms of another currency. Got it? I mentioned earlier, in the foreign exchange market, what you buy, what you sell, both are currencies, not in like other markets. In other markets, you buy some goods, pay, you don't say sell, you pay some rupees or in one, whatever the amount in a currency. Say you go to a boutique, you buy 1 kilo of rice, you buy rice, you pay rupees, 98 rupees. So the price of 1 kilo of rice is 98. But in FX market, what's the difference? You buy dollars, you pay rupees. So dollar is a currency, rupee is also currency. Then what is the price? What is the value of $1 in terms of rupees? That's the price. $1 equals 190 rupees. That's the price. That is we call exchange rate. So $1, price of a dollar in terms of rupees, that is the exchange rate. But if you want, you can tell it other way around. In general market, in my previous example, rice and rupees, you don't tell 1 rupee is equal 100 grams of rice or something like that. You can't do that. It's not practical. But in foreign exchange, that can be done because both are currencies. When you say $1 equals 190 rupees, that is the price of dollar in terms of rupees. But you can say what is the value of 1 rupee in terms of dollars as well. That is also possible. That is also exchange rate. So when you say exchange rate, you have to be very careful. What are the two currencies? In which currency that you have expressed the price of the other currency. Is it clear? Exchange rate is the price of one currency in terms of another currency. In this, my example given in these slides, 1 JPY equals 135 LKR rupees. 1 Japanese yen equals 1.35 rupees. 1 rupee and 35 cents. If you want, you can write it. 1 LKR equals some 30 cents of yen or something like that. It is also possible. So in the global markets, when we write exchange rates, we use this convention. Sometimes you may see a stroke here. When you have that stroke, you have to be careful. But generally, this is the way. JPY LKR is 1.35. So whatever the currency written in left hand side is the currency of which price is given in the currency written in the right hand side. So when you see JPY LKR is equals 1.35, what does it mean? 1 JPY equals 1.35 LKR. So key here is don't get confused. Whatever the mathematics or the arithmetics that you use in your day-to-day life to convert prices, if you know the price of 1 kilo, what is the price of 10 kilos of price? Whatever the arithmetic that you use, the same applies here. Nothing fancy. So don't get confused or don't think too much. This is very simple. So let's switch into this. I can better explain now. It's about another terms, base currency and counter currency. I think you can see if I write here. So in the previous example, we express JPY LKR equals 1.35. What does it mean? 1 JPY equals 1.35 LKR. So 1 unit of yen equals 1.35 unit LKR.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
We can't see this because other way around it shows like when you see in the mirror, when you write on the board, we can't see. Yes, we can't see because
you
other way
see it
around
on
you can see
the
like
reverse side.
Yeah, yes, sir. Better you can do in the presentation. If you do it, we can see, but it's a bit difficult, no?
Yes. Now you see this in the reverse side, no?
Left to right. Yeah, reverse side. Yeah, correct.
Right to left. Is there any way that we can make it other way around? Because this should be possible.
Maybe you have to write on the whatever the presentation you do using your computer. Other than that, there is no way, I think.
Writing on the computer is.
Yeah, it's bit difficult. Correct. Bit difficult. Yes, understood.
So we'll try this.
Yeah. Okay.
So because these are not like having sensitive pen, so nothing, just I'm using the PowerPoint itself. You can see the presentation.
Can see, sir. Can see.
Okay. So early example, 1 JPY equals 1.35 LKR. So price of yen is quoted in rupees. So we call this JPY is the base currency. And what is the currency in which the price is quoted? We call this as the counter currency. This is base currency. Clear? So if we write 1 USD equals 186 LKR, what is the base currency? US dollar is the base currency. LKR is the counter currency. This is the concept. But we don't write it like this all the time. We write it like this. Dollar LKR, Euro GBP, Euro USD, USD JPY, AUD USD. Okay. One more thing. What are these three letters? USD, LKR, EUR, GBP, AUD. What are those? Those are the ISO codes for each currency. So globally, to refer US dollar, USD, three letters are used. For Sri Lankan rupee, LKR. Those are the standard. For British pound, GBP. Euro, EUR. JPY is for the Japanese yen. Basically, first two letters to denote the country, and the last letter is to refer the currency. JPY, Japan. JP for Japan. Currency is yen. Y is for yen. In LKR, LK is for Lanka. R is rupee. US, United States, currency is dollar. Likewise, this one doesn't follow that because currency is we call euro. Region is also euro region. So that's the only exception. AUD, Australian dollar. AU for the Australia, D is for dollar. So be familiar with these ISO codes. We will use most common currencies. For Indian rupee, it's INR. Indian rupee. IN for India, R is for rupee. So we'll go back to this base currency and counter currency concept. When we write this, whatever the currency written in left side are base currency. What does it mean? Price of a dollar is given in LKR. Here, price of a euro is given in sterling pound. Price of a euro given in dollars. Price of a dollar given in yen. Price of an Australian dollar given in US dollar. And these currencies are the counter currency. So remember, note that dollar appears both sides. Even GBP may appear both sides. Generally for GBP and dollar, GBP USD. So what is the base currency? GBP is the base currency, USD is the counter currency. That means value of £1 is given in dollars. Something like this. Value of £1 is given in dollars. So not each and every currency always appears as a base currency or counter currency. It's not the case. Depending on the currency pair, it may change. So the concept here is, what is the currency that we use to give the price or quote the price? That is the counter currency. Of which currency that we have quote the price, that is the base currency. Here the price is given in dollars, so the dollar is the counter currency. The price of sterling pound or the British pound is given in dollars, so therefore British pound is the base currency. In these pairs, price of dollar is given in LKR. LKR is the counter currency, dollar is the base currency. In this, price of price of euro is given in sterling pounds. So the base currency is euro, counter currency is sterling pound. Price of euro is given in dollars. Therefore, dollar is counter currency, euro is the base currency. Price of dollar is given in yen, dollar base currency, yen counter currency. Price of Australian dollar is given in dollars, US dollars, both are dollars, Australian dollars and US dollars. Price of Australian dollar is given in terms of US dollars. Australian dollar is the base currency, US dollar is the counter currency. This euro is a special currency. According to the standards they set up, always euro should be the base currency. So you won't see in the market generally euro appears as a counter currency. Always it will be in the base currency, but other currencies there's no such thing. It can be in base currency or counter currency. But you have to understood, you should be able to interpret this price 130.5. What does it mean? USD LKR 130.50. You should be able to understand. This is nothing but $1 equals 130.5 rupees. How do you interpret the last one? 1 Australian dollar is equal to 0.9238 US dollars. If you can understand that, you can do all other calculations and conversion. If 1 Australian dollar equals to 0.9238 US dollars, what is the value of 10 million of Australian dollars? Price or the exchange rate is AUD USD 0.9238. What is the value of 10 million US dollars? Sorry, 10 million Australian dollars in terms of US dollars? It is 923,800. So just multiply by 10 million. So likewise, you should be able to do this. And earlier I mentioned, so in our previous example, 1 JPY equals 1.35 LKR. Okay. What is the domestic currency? What is the foreign currency? For us as Sri Lankan, Japanese yen is foreign currency, and LKR is the domestic currency. But if you consider this, $1 equals 107 JPY. What is the foreign currency? What is the domestic currency? For us, both are foreign currencies. So therefore, when we use the words foreign currency and domestic currency, it's a relative thing. When it comes us to foreign currency, it may be a local currency for the other party. In this, for a Japanese person, JPY is the local currency, LKR is the foreign currency. Here, JPY local currency, dollar is foreign currency for a Japanese person. But for a US person, dollar is the local currency, yen is the foreign currency. But based on the way that we write, what is the base currency, what is the counter currency, there are two-way quoting conventions. We quote them direct quote and indirect quote. In the direct quote, the precise definition is this: number of domestic currency units per one foreign currency unit. So if we consider this example, 1 JPY equals 1.35 LKR, from Sri Lankan perspective, 1.35 LKR, that is number of domestic currency units per one foreign currency unit. Foreign currency is yen. We have given the quotes in that way. We have expressed value of yen in terms of rupees. We call that type of quotation as direct quote. But when it comes to this, what we can say, it's neither direct neither indirect, because both are foreign currencies for us. Though this is the very accurate definition, number of domestic currency units per one foreign currency unit as the direct quote, in the global market, the practice is to consider in the direct quote, dollar is the base currency. If the dollar is base currency, then in the international market, we consider it as a direct quote. So in this, $1 equals 107 JPY, this is a direct quote. In that means, we consider JPY as the local currency, dollar as the foreign currency, always. This is all over the world. The second one, USD BDT. What is BDT? Bangladesh Taka. $1 in terms of Bangladesh Taka. $LKR, $1 in terms of LKR. So base currency is dollar, counter currency is local currency. This is we call direct quote, but remember this is the exact definition, but it is relative. If we go by this, for a US citizen, this is not a direct quote because its domestic currency is dollars. Price of yen is not given in dollars. It's other way around. That is we call indirect quote. Number of foreign currency units per one domestic currency unit. Other way around. Number of foreign currency units per one domestic currency units. But the good thing is, in the international markets, there are only few currencies quoted in this way. Most of the currencies are quoted other way around. Dollar as the base currency. Few currencies are quoted in this way. Here we consider dollar as the local currency. Again, dollar as the foreign currency, and euro, sterling, Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar, Fiji dollar, and Botswana I cannot remember. This is last one is Botswana currency. So only few currencies are quoted in the indirect way. The difference here is still better go by the base currency and counter currency. Whether it's direct quote or indirect quote, it is irrelevant. What does this mean? Value of €1 is given in terms of dollar. Value of $1 New Zealand dollar is given in US dollar. However, the simple rule that you can remember the direct quote and indirect quote. If the counter currency is dollar, it is indirect quote. If the counter base currency is dollars, it's the direct quote. That's the international convention. Then trade date and the value date, other two concepts. I think I explained this trade date, value date concept when we discuss about. Yes.
Part base currency, only that part.
You want to know what does it mean by base currency?
No. What you mentioned previously, base currency. If it is base currency is USD, something
yes.
like that you mentioned. Just yes.
In this direct quote, you can see in the international, though the definition is given as when you express exchange rate as price of foreign currency unit in terms of domestic currency. In the global, you cannot distinguish between what is local, what is foreign, because always one currency is foreign, one currency is local most of the time. There may be sometimes like this, dollar or JPY is not local for us. Both are foreign. Then how do you refer this as a direct quote or a indirect quote? It's difficult. But therefore, globally, the accepted norm is when dollar is the base currency, when the dollar is base currency, it is considered as a direct quote. Clear? When the dollar is base currency, it is considered as direct quote. When the dollar is the counter currency, it is considered as indirect quote. Is it clear?
Right. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Then trade date and value date. What is trade date? Okay. This is something that not applicable for a retail. As I mentioned at the beginning, there are things that some concepts may not be applicable for retail, but in the wholesale market. If you want to buy foreign currency, say you want to travel abroad, what do? You go to the bank counter and say, I want to buy $1,000. They will check the documents and they will give you $1,000 by debiting your saving account, or you may pay rupee in cash. On the spot, you get dollars. That's what happening in the retail market. But in the wholesale market, it won't happen. So if somebody wants to buy $1 million, are you going to carry $1 million in a briefcase or something like that? No, you can't do that. It won't happen. So it will settle through accounts, correspondence accounts in relevant countries. I think I explained that as well. What is the settlement process through correspondence accounts or the Nostro accounts in different countries. So in this, trade date is where you enter into the transaction, that two parties agree to a transaction. One party agrees to buy one currency and sell another currency. Party A buy US dollars, then party B sell US dollars. This is the agreement against, say, LKR. So agreement between party A and party B that takes place on the trade date. But when do you transfer the real ownership? It won't happen immediately. It will take 2 days in general in the foreign exchange market. That is we call value date, when the actual settlement takes place. That means from your account, if you are the buyer of dollars against rupee, your account will be debited, rupee account, and your dollar account will be credited on another day, not the same date as you agree to the transaction. So this physical movement of cash among accounts, or maybe electronic entries, on the date, on the settlement date, that movement will happen. We call it value date or the settlement date as well. Both are same. This is a concept applicable for most of the other instruments in the market, not only for FX, even bonds, equities, some derivative products. You enter into a transaction on a particular date and settles it on a future date. Settlement means you pay whatever you owe and you get whatever dues for you. So usually in the FX market, this takes place in 2 business days, T+2, 2 business days. Remember, if you enter into a transaction on Monday is the trade date, 2 business days, assuming no holidays in between. Wednesday, you will transfer the ownership of the currencies. That date is we call the spot settlement date. There's one exception for Canadian dollar. The spot settlement is only T+1. If you enter into the transaction today, tomorrow the Canadian dollar will settle against dollar. Another exception is split settlement in Middle East. What is split settlement? That means, say, before we consider split settlement, consider normal usual settlement. If today is the value date, we will receive whatever we own today, whatever dues for us today, and we pay the whatever our obligation today itself. So on the same business day, payment and receipts will take place. But in a split settlement, with that there are special holidays, one currency payment or receipt will be taken place in one day, and the other currency payment or receipt will be taken place on another day. So two value dates, two settlement dates. That is we call split settlement, but most of the time this is discouraged because there's a risk. You pay today, but you have to wait until tomorrow to get your money. So there's a risk in between that. Anything can happen. Counterparty may go bankrupt. So there's a risk. So to minimize that risk, split settlements are discouraged. Even in the usual settlement, this value date, there's a risk, settlement risk. We will discuss it later. As I mentioned, spot value date means 2 business days after the trade date. What is trade date? Trade date is the date that you entered into the transaction, come to the agreement. Value date is the date that you transfer the ownership. So when that value date falls after two business days from the trade date, we call it the spot rate. So in the wholesale market, whatever the price given is applicable for spot settlement. That means you might see 186 is the dollar rupee exchange rate today. But if you enter into a transaction at that rate, rupee and dollar will be exchanged between two parties after 2 days time, not today itself. So therefore the quoted price we call is the spot rate, and the settlement date is called the spot date. Spot date falls after 2 business days from the from the trade date. Then the TOM. There may be requirements to settle without waiting for 2 days. For some reason you can't wait to settle for 2 days. You need it next day, 1 business day after the trade date. We call that TOM, tomorrow value. That is short form TOM. And the other one is cash settlement. Again, there may be requirements. You can't wait. You need it today itself. On the date that you enter into the transaction, you need to settle it. That sort of transaction we call cash settlement. In the cash settlement, trade date and the value date are the same. In the cash settlement, trade date and the value date are the same. In the TOM, settlement date falls 1 day after the business day. In the spot transaction, settlement date falls after 2 business days from the trade date. Last one, the forward transaction. Any settlement date falls beyond the spot trade date. We call normal settlement date. Any transaction which has a settlement date beyond the spot date, we call it as a forward transaction. It can be 3 days after trade date, maybe 3 months, maybe 1 year, whatever it is, beyond 2 working days. Settlement date falls beyond 2 working days from the trade date. Everything commonly we call them are forward transactions. And I mentioned earlier, whatever the price given in the market, quoted price is the spot rate. Then for TOM transaction, cash transaction, and forward transaction, we need to adjust the spot price accordingly. You may not get the same price for forward transaction or a TOM transaction or a cash transaction. Depending on the interest rates applicable, the price may go up or maybe lower than the spot price depending on the interest rates. We will discuss how to price a forward and TOM and cash transactions as well based on the spot forward price in future. And the other two words used in the market maker and market taker. Again, this is also not only applicable for the FX transactions, other financial market transactions as well in the wholesale market generally. Who is the market maker? We go back to these. Exporter comes and when he receive foreign currency, he sell foreign currency to a bank. Who decides the price? The bank, when the exporter walks into the bank and asks, I want to sell foreign currency, the bank and the amount, bank A will give a price to the exporter. So bank A is the market maker who quotes a price to a other party. Then the exporter, he can decide whether I would like to sell at this price or not. He can act based on the price given by the bank. So therefore, exporter becomes the market taker. In between bank and exporter, exporter would become a market taker all the time, and the bank becomes market maker. He quotes to the exporter. Same thing would happen at the end, importer and the bank as well. Importer wants to buy, he has to buy at the price given by the bank. So therefore, bank is the market maker, importer is the market taker. But we discuss about a transaction between two banks, A and B. In this instance, Bank A will contact Bank B and ask for a price. Say US dollar 1 million against LKR. Then the Bank B will give a price. At what price the Bank B is willing to buy dollars, at what price Bank B is willing to sell dollars. So the Bank B quotes the price. So in this transaction between Bank A and Bank B is the market maker who is making a price. Bank A, what it can be done, Bank A can either agree with prices given by Bank B and enter into the transaction, or just say I don't want to do these transactions or nothing done. So in this, Bank B becomes market maker, Bank A becomes a market taker. So same party may act as a market maker and a market taker depending on the situation. So if we go around in this transaction between Bank D and Bank A, since Bank D wants to do the trade, Bank D contacts Bank A and asks for a price. Bank A becomes the market maker, Bank D becomes market taker. But the transaction between C and D, bank C becomes market maker while bank D becomes market taker. So in simple, who makes the price? That's market maker. Who acts on someone else's price is the market taker. But in the global markets, banks they don't wait until somebody asks for a price. They have their systems, platforms. They always shows their prices for different currencies on the screen. So that is also we call market making. They show price. Anybody can act on that price. So they are market makers. So market maker, the person who is making the two-way quote. Market taker is the person or the party who is dealing on the two-way price given by another party. What is two-way quote? Again, in the previous example, I mentioned that exporter will tell the bank, I have this much of dollars and I want to sell. Then the bank will give a price. But in the interbank market, when you do trades between banks, the market taker, when he asks in a price from the market maker, he won't tell whether he wants to sell or buy. He just tell the currency pair and the amount. Then the market maker will give two prices. At which price market maker would like to buy and what price he would like to sell or he is willing to sell. So that is the two-way quote. We call it bid and ask. So in this example, euro dollar, there are two exchange rates, 1.3645, 1.3647. The left hand side figure is lower than the right hand side. The left hand side price we call it the bid, right hand side we call it ask or the offer. Okay. What is the interpretation? When you say euro USD, what does it mean? What is the base currency? What is the counter currency? What is this 1.3645? In this pair, euro is the base currency, dollar is the counter currency. So this 1.3645 is 1 euro equals 1.3645 US dollar. This one, 1 euro equals 1.3647 US dollars. What are those prices? The bid price is the price at which the market maker, remember the market maker who gives this price is the market maker. He is willing to buy 1 euro paying $1.3645 per euro. So this is the buying price. Buying price of whom? Buying price of market maker. What is he going to buy? He is going to buy, or he is willing to buy euro against dollar, paying $1.3645 per 1 euro. Clear? Bid is the buying price of the market maker. Market maker is willing to buy base currency. So bid is the buying price of the base currency by the market maker. Then what is ask or the offer? That is the price the market maker is willing to sell base currency. Market maker is willing to sell 1 euro and receive $1.3647. That is two-way quote. Again, this two-way quote, bid and ask, you can see it in the other financial markets as well. So whatever it is, whether it's FX market or any other market, bid is the buying price of the market maker, ask is the, or the offer is the selling price of the market maker. And you know, you would like to do, or that there's a rule or concept, buy low, sell high. So market maker buy low, only by paying 45 here, but he sells at 47. Buy low, sell high. That's why bid is lower than offer. This is the general condition. Bid is lower than offer, but there can be instances bid is higher than offer. We will see in future, but instances the bid will be higher than the offer, and how do we adjust the price accordingly. At this point, we have to understand what is bid price, what is offer price. Bid price is the buying price for the buying price of the market maker. He is willing to buy base currency against counter currency at the bid price. Offer price is the price the market maker is willing to sell base currency against the counter currency. The difference between these bid and offer, we call it bid-ask spread. Bid-ask spread. Sometimes we just say spread. The difference between bid and ask. So here the spread is 0.0002. When the market is highly liquid, this spread will be very, very low, like you can see here. When the liquidity is not there in the market, spread becomes wide. And the other one I want to highlight with this figure and big figure and points in the exchange rate market. So you can see there are 5 numbers, 5 digits in the exchange rate, this exchange rate 1.3645. so the last 2 digits we call them points or pips, that is 100th of 1%. What does it mean? 1% is 0.01. This divided by 100, this is equal to 1 pip. Or 1 point. But this is applicable for currencies generally quoted with 4 decimal places. But like Sri Lankan rupees, we quote it Sri Lankan rupees, Indian rupees, Japanese yen. It may be only 2 decimal places in this 45, the last 2 digits, we call them points or pips. But major currencies, when they quote it with 4 decimal places, last 2 digits are called pips. 1 pip is equal 100th of 1%. That means 1% is 0.01 divided by 100. So 0.0001, 3 zeros and 1, that is a 1 point. Whenever trader quotes price, they don't quote this big figure, only the last two. So in this case, he might quote 45, 47. That's it. This is buying price, this is selling price. Market participants, they know what is the current exchange rate, general level, and the big figure, because big figure won't change very frequently, but the last two digit figures will change quickly. So therefore, FX market is very volatile, very fast. So therefore, they have to act very quickly. Whenever somebody asks price, there's no time to type or read all these things. So therefore, they use the last digits. If it is over the phone, whenever somebody asks euro dollar 1 million, the market maker say 45.47. That's it. 45.47. Then the market taker knows 45 is the bid, 47 is the offer, and he should know that 1.36 is the big figure. We call that first three digits as big figure. Market participants, they should know this is the big figure. So figure, points, and pips, those are the words mostly used in FX market. So this is it. Again, it's not that big concept. Same thing in different words. Reciprocal quote. Again, I'll go back to the what I mentioned at the very beginning. JPY. My first example, if I remember correctly, 1 JPY equals 1.35 LKR. So I mentioned at the beginning, when you express the exchange rate, this is one way. Value of yen in terms of LKR. But if we want, we can write what is the value of 1 LKR in terms of yen. How do you find it? Oh, that is what is this rate? This is called the reciprocal quote. You switch the base currency and the counter currency. You change base currency into counter currency and counter currency into base currency, then the exchange rate should change. How do you calculate it? It's very easy. It's nothing but you take the reciprocal of the exchange rate. That means 1 divided by the exchange rate. So for example, if you want to find this is 1 over 1.35. So 1 divided by a larger number than 1, you get less than 1 figure, some 0.0 something. So in the example given in the slide, this Euro USD rate is 1.4045. Euro is the base currency, dollar is the counter currency. So what is the meaning of this? 1 euro is equal $1.4045. But if you want to express it other way around, what is the price of a dollar in terms of euro? That is the reciprocal quote. Dollar euro. Generally in the market you won't see this, but if you want, you can do this. So dollar is the base currency, euro is the counter currency. What you do, you take the exchange rate and 1 divide by that exchange rate, 0.7120. This is the reciprocal quote. So You change the base currency and counter currency, therefore you have to change the exchange rate. Flip over, then you get the exchange rate. If you go by the, if you look at this Euro USD, in our direct quote, indirect quote terms, Euro USD is an indirect quote. When we make it other way around, it becomes direct quote. So the reciprocal quote means expressing a direct quote as an indirect quote or expressing indirect quote as a direct quote. To get the change the exchange rate, either way, what you have to do, take the reciprocal figure. That's simple. But when we have two-way quotes, it is not that simple. Because consider this example, Euro USD 1.4045 and 47. This is the bid price, this is the ask price. If assume now you want to express it as dollar euro rate, other way around. What do? You calculate the reciprocals. If you calculate the reciprocal of the offer 1 over 1.4047, you can see the figure is 0.7119. If you calculate the reciprocal of the bid, you get 0.7120. Which one is high? 19 or 20? 20 is high. But 1.4045 was the bid. Can you consider this as the bid of the reciprocal quote? No, because this is higher than the reciprocal quote of the offer. Why is that? When you divide 1 by a large number, you get a small figure. Bid is small figure, offer is high figure. When you divide 1 by the large figure, you get a small figure. When you divide 1 by the small figure, you get a big figure. So therefore you have to cross them. That's why it says in the dollar euro, when you want to find the bid value, it should be the reciprocal of the offer. 1.14047. Reciprocal of the offer. This is the bid of the reciprocal quote. If you to get the offer of the reciprocal quote, that is the reciprocal of the bid. Is it clear? USD euro bid is the reciprocal of the offer. USD euro offer, that is the reciprocal of the bid. So ultimately, quote would be 19 for USD UR. The quote is 0.7119 stroke 0.7120. So this is the reciprocal of the bid of the original quote. This is the reciprocal of the offer of the original quote. So reciprocal is easy to calculate, just take the 1 over figure. But when you have bid of a two-way quote, you have to cross it. That means take the reciprocal of the offer, and that would become the bid of the reciprocal rate. Take the reciprocal of the bid, that would become the reciprocal of the offer. So I think that's enough for today. That's what I planned. Yes, I mean also good. If you have any questions or any comments, you can pass it now. Any questions?
Sir, do you have the recorded version of this lecture? Because we have missed.
This has been recorded and they will post it. I don't know where.
First half and 1.5 hours we missed basically.
Why is that?
Because actually I didn't know. Yesterday I couldn't check the mail, and today in the morning only. Yeah, this is the first day. No?
That's the reason. Okay. So that's one thing. So that's why, if you can remember, very first day I mentioned the previous batch. I suggested for them, if you wish, you can make a WhatsApp group or some sort of group.
Yeah.
So you would see the benefit if you had some sort of group during the past few 2 months. Even you could have asked questions. So
yeah, it's a good suggestion. Yes.
So better to have a group form.
I just want to add, sir, since we don't have the contact numbers of everyone, we would like Menaka can create a WhatsApp group, because we don't have each and every contact number. We want to create a contact number since this COVID issue.
You may ask, he may be able to give. Or what you can do, create the group with the whatever the existing contacts. They might have contacts of others. Ask them to add them. That's the way.
Okay, that is.
Yes, and try to pass the message. That will work.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Anything else?
And this, I don't know whether you have this answer for this. Just get an idea. What is the best way to get understand this two-way course? Like, is it an easy way to understand, or the when if you need to do this thing for us, when you're going for a sum, what will be the best method to us to understand about this reciprocal value and all?
No, the first we have to understand the concept. So exchange rate, what's the way that it expresses base currency, counter currency, and the figure. That means one unit of base currency is equivalent to the given amount of counter currency.
Counter currency, correct.
Once you know that, say 1 equals 10 something, then you can do whatever calculations. If one of these equals, say, can you remember in grade 5, 6, not 6, 7, 8, we learn for mathematics, a value of a pencil is worth of 5 books, and one book is valued 2 erasers. Then how many erasers you can buy from by giving a pencil, things like that.
Yeah.
Same thing. Whatever unit is irrespective, the numbers, what you that's the way. But in the two-way code, the answer, remember, always think about from one point.
One point.
That means consider it as from the market maker's point of view. That's the best thing.
From the market maker. Market maker point of view. Yes.
But remember,
thank you.
But remember, in questions there may be asked, you are quoted this price and what price you would buy. That can happen. But think, market maker, he will buy at the bid. Then as a market taker, I have to sell at bid. So other way is always market maker buys at the lower price. That means as a market taker, we have to sell at the lower price. Always market maker will sell at higher price. So we have to buy it at higher price.
Higher price. Okay. Thank you.
If you are a market taker. So first we have to clear what is your role, whether it's a market maker or a market
maker or a market taker. Yes.
That first clear about it. And the easy way to remember is always remember from the market maker's point of view. Market maker buy low, sell high. That's its strategy.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
And sir,
going forward, next week we will have the continuation of foreign exchange market, others forwards and things. So therefore we need
at the same time
we need this background knowledge. So please review. You have time now.
Okay, okay. So at the same time, we are going to have the lecture, no? Like from 8 to 10, is it?
I think so. Still,
Ah,
there's
okay, sir. Thanks.
they will let you know.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, yes. The other thing is inform your friends as well.
Okay, okay.
So be in touch with the institute.
Right.
So
Thanks, sir. Thank you very much.
emails.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Is there any question? Otherwise, we can wind up.